In today's show, Oregon Secretary of State Tobias joins the program for a fun and wide-ranging conversation about how the Blazers will use public funding to upgrade the arena that'll help them stay in Portland long-term. Plus, the origins of the Secretary's Blazers fandom and how Greg Oden once made the State House floor. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen and tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's program, from what I understand, this is the highest ranking public official who has ever appeared on any Locked On podcast program. Oregon Secretary of State Tobias Reed, how you doing? Welcome to the program.
I am great. I'm so excited to talk to you. You know, normally we talk about chain of custody of ballots and signature verification, which is all really important stuff. But today I get to talk about my favorite team, my hometown team, with somebody who knows about it. This is great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. You have been, in the public political world in Portland for nearly 20 years, closing in on 2 decades as your state rep if you're from the Beaverton area, the state treasurer for about 7 years, and now the Secretary of State. But so you've kind of seen the political process of Portland play out from a variety of levels. I'm wondering here, though, I think the biggest sort of political news as it relates to the Trailblazers, this is where I want to start, is that the Blazers are going to do some renovations on the arena, and part of the renovations was signing a new ground lease with the city and buying some land, or excuse me, selling some land back to the city. So it's like to sort of change of ownership in a formal way, and selling the arena back to the city council for $1. I wonder, in your expertise, how have other municipalities maybe throughout the country dealt with this sort of public-private balance when it comes to updating an arena or things like of that nature?
Well, I think we have a real advantage here because we now are very much investors in this. So we need it to succeed from a pure financial point of view. But beyond that, nobody who listens to Locked On Blazers needs any convincing about the central role that the team, the arena has in our future as a city, as a state, as a region. We need this to succeed. We want the team to stay here. We want the success of the team to reverberate around the whole area. This has got to be a place that people want to come and have fun. And that's hard to believe, but I was around when the then Rose Garden was new. How lucky were we to have an owner who was willing to finance it himself? But that's not true, and that's not true anymore. And now it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, arena. So making sure that it gets upgraded is a big deal, and making the team a success. I mean, how bad is it when Josh Hart has to tweet out and say, where do I go after a game? There are lots of examples worth to look to. Indianapolis is one, and actually the public-private partnership that happened there, I think, played a big part in bringing the All-Star game there. We've already got a women's Final Four headed our direction. Let's use that as a beacon that we can build towards, and all the other things that can come after that. There's nothing magic in this, but just making sure that there is a connection between the dollars that go in, some of them public, and the benefits that come out that the public will enjoy. And frankly, I feel a lot more momentum towards that, and a lot more willingness to be creative from the city and the state, and hopefully we're going to be able to celebrate something not too far into the future.
Well, I guess what I am curious about, or what when you talk about renovating a building that is run by billionaires and played in by millionaires, and you're talking about tax money funding that, I think people get a little bit nervous. Can you speak to how that relationship works? Because that is, I think that gives maybe some folks, particularly non-sports folks, a little bit of maybe second thoughts.
Yes, and I think in a lot of situations that is a very understandable situation because it's not owned by the public. But now, with the arena being owned by the city, by the public, we have more reason to be willing to invest in it. And it's not just the Blazers that are going to be there. They're, of course, the most iconic, the most visible, the most well-known tenant, but lots of other things happen there. And if you're not a sports fan, there's lots of other things to take advantage of. But even if you don't want to ever show up there, having that kind of an asset to the city is central to what goes on. Polling is really clear about what people like about having that asset downtown and the untapped potential that exists there too. The work that the Albina Vision Trust is doing to bring back the activity and the history and the just the vibrancy that was there for so long. It's really exciting to think about what can happen leading up to a game or another event, what can happen after, and how that can become much more of a focal point, a real magnet for the downtown core. But again, the fact that it is now owned by the city, by us, should, I think, make it a lot easier for people to feel good about investing in it, because we'll get that back. The ownership of the arena remains with the public, and that's a big advantage when it comes to thinking about public financing of upgrades and renovations.
So, as I understand it, and you can correct me here, some of this public money will come from a roughly 6%, 7% tax on like parking and ticketing revenue, and that will go into helping upgrade the arena. Is there other money that could be directed to upgrade the area around the arena? You mentioned the Albina Vision Trust, or are we talking about getting the arena to a place with some like public event dollars and then moving forward from there?
I think there are lots of different ways to do it, and that's what I meant. Like, there's not. Sometimes I think people feel like it's some obscure thing and it's difficult and complex, and it can be, but it can also be as simple as thinking about their public dollars, whether it's from the city or the county or the state, and their needs that we have to pay for. And so it's really just a matter of matching up those dollars that come in from whatever source and how those returns can be distributed again. But we're all going to do better when that arena is successful, when there are more people employed. I think it's great to think about the way that it used to be. People were able to, who worked in the arena, were able to live nearby and get there and really contribute to the vibrancy of that neighborhood. Let's get back to that. Because when more people are working, more people are paying income taxes, more dollars available to the state and locales to invest in things that we all care about that ripple out from that arena. It can be such a powerful and impactful force to the whole of the community, and even the way we feel about each other and ourselves. I was raised in Boise, and one of my introductions was watching, listening to Round Ball Rock, and seeing the Blazers and those iconic kind of images of Portland. When the Blazers were successful, this was an image that went out to the rest of the world, and that will result in economic advantages as well. So there's lots of different ways that dollars can come into that, and we should be thinking creatively and thinking long term about it.
You mentioned the sort of securing the Blazers' place here. They signed a lease, what the team terms a bridge lease agreement, and to me,
yes.
That means short term. But they signed in August of 2024. They reached a lease agreement that will extend for 5 years, from 2025 to 2030, and has an option to extend for an additional 5 years. So we're talking potentially a decade of the agreement. Was there concern in Salem that the Portland Trail Blazers could leave?
I think there's always concern about that. We should never just think of ourselves as entitled. Capital is mobile in the world. It's a lot harder to move a professional and major league team than it is, to write a check. But we shouldn't assume anything. And I think it's a very responsible and smart thing to do, to give ourselves, the Blazers and the city, time to be responsive. I can't think of a good outcome when the backs are up against the wall and there's a deadline that's approaching. But we shouldn't also be relaxed about that. 5 years goes quickly. Yeah. So we want to get the long-term agreement. I think the team and the city both would want to have confidence about the mechanisms to upgrade the arena, to how it fits into the core, to the plan for all of the city, and have that long-term plan. But trying to do that in a year or 18 months or something could result in a lot of brinksmanship and pressure that wouldn't contribute to a good deal. So I was glad to see that, and I don't think we should be relaxed because we got a lot of things to figure out.
What has changed since 1995 when Paul Allen decided to privately fund the construction of this arena to now? Like, what has changed in sort of the way these private and public entities interact in your eyes?
Well, that's a broad question. I think it's a lot of how people think about things and what public entities are expected to do and expected to pay for. The difference, I think, fundamentally that we talked about already is this will be a publicly owned facility. A lot of other places look like there's asks for public money into a privately owned facility. And we don't have that. So thankfully, these interests are going to be aligned. Public money into a public facility is a much easier to sell, I think, a much easier thing to convince people of than public money into a private facility. So having those aligned gives us a lot more potential, a lot more room. And I think the other thing that's less about finance, but thinking about the history of the Blazers and the arc of where we've been, this feels like we're on that upswing again, where we can get the kind of public involvement and public excitement. I really am a fan here. So thinking about what's in front of the team, I think it's going to be easier to have a conversation about that when there's a product on the court, a group of players, and a team that the community can be proud to be associated with and be fans of. Imagine how much harder this would be if we were in the midst of the Jailblazer era. I think that the politics would be much tougher.
Yeah, certainly. I think in an increasingly fractured public world, sports are about the only thing we care about together. Indeed, I do think sports get pretty tribal, and so people get when you root for one laundry, you really root against others. But I do think, like, collectively in the community, it's probably the only thing that unites us in a way in an increasingly fractured, bizarre world that we live in, which is a bummer. Yeah. But it also is a nice thing to say, like, there is a thing to point to that we all agree on, and we agree that we really hope Shaedon Sharpe develops a 3-point jump shot, because boy, would that change things.
Yes.
I want to ask you about, you mentioned a Blazer fan. I know that you're a sport dad too, and all of these things. Yes. I want to ask you about your basketball bona fides. That's what we'll do in the second segment. Join us there, won't ya? First, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why your business needs Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or on your computer. It lets you manage your business calls and texts from a single app. And it's got a shared inbox feature, which can be a real game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. Plus, they got an AI agent that handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. And Open Phone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have any existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. All right, still chatting here with Secretary of State Tobias Reed. Again, this is the highest ranking public figure to ever be on any Locked On show, so don't take it for granted that the Secretary is giving us a little bit of time here. So for those of you not watching on YouTube, you've got a Bearcat hoop shirt on. I know you're a Willamette grad. I went to Lewis and Clark, so there's a little bit of Northwest Conference rivalry there. Go Pios.
This is great.
But you mentioned you're a Blazer fan. How often are you attending games? Like, what is your sort of current relationship with the team now?
I wish I could attend a lot more. Our daughter, my wife and I have a daughter who is a sophomore in high school, and I'm very proud. She is a varsity basketball player. So We try to get there when we can, but most of the time you'll find me. I went to the coach and said, "You need to hire me as the book guy or the scoreboard guy, because it'll make me a lot less likely to be backseat coaching." So I fortunately got that job, and I spend every game I can with her and her team. But we probably make it to 3, 4, 5 games. It's hard, as you know, because there aren't that many that aren't on school nights.
Yeah.
And thankfully our daughter's a pretty motivated student, so we try to fit all of those in. But otherwise, I'm watching everything I can. This comes from being a kid in Idaho and having to pick a team. So it's been the Blazers for me as long as I can remember. This Bearcat hoop shirt actually is a weird connection too, because I was fortunate after having made that choice to show up at Willamette and realize that there's history between Willamette and the Blazers. Blazers did their training camp there sometimes. In fact, on that 30 for 30 about Bill Walton, you can see photos or video of him practicing in the Willamette gym. When I got there, Willamette was on a nice run basketball-wise. In fact, won the national championship in 1994. And on that team was a young R.J. Adelman, son of Rick Adelman. So there's connection there. And most fun for me, I think, is right now when we're at an inflection point in some ways in a rebuild. I think it is so much more fun to be, as you say, holding on to joy and thinking about potential in a young team rather than an aging team or a team that's already kind of established their identity. And it is so much fun to watch the personalities emerging, to watch the potential, to think about what might be and what's that last little piece. Could we win the lottery? And could we have a pick that is really going to be transformational, that kind of completes this roster and this core? There's so much that is exciting and optimistic that's in a team like this that I'm excited. I was a little sad that the season is over, because there was so much growth in the second half, so much more potential and things to look forward to. That let's get the summer league. Let's see what we have. Let's keep going.
Well, I wonder if you'll weigh in officially on who they should pick first overall. I know that early in your political career, you ventured into that. We'll talk about that a little bit more to close the show. But
sure.
I think so. I know that you're a somewhat infrequent listener to the program, and I truly appreciate it. But I introduce myself as a pass first point guard. I'm wondering if you are still playing pickup basketball at all, and what kind of player you would describe yourself as.
Oh, I would. It's an interesting way of putting it. My favorite Blazer of all time was Arvydas Sabonis, because, of course, I resonate with being a bigger, slower guy. I was once 6'7". I'm probably 6'6" now. I've never been accused of being fast, so I get as much pleasure when I am able to drag myself up and down the court from a rebound and a good outlet pass or setting a screen. So I don't know how to put that in the nice alliterative form that you have about pass first point guard. I thought about policy first politician, but that doesn't quite work in the same way. But I do really like it, and playing pickup for me is the greatest possible escape, because whatever other thing I might be worried about, I can step on the court when I can, be confident enough that I'm not going to rupture my Achilles or something at my age, and all those other things that I'm worried about just kind of fade away, because all you can think about is, where's the ball going? Am I boxing out? Who's got an outlet? Where are the? I'm nothing flashy. I never was. My probably 3 favorite NBA players are Duncan and Sabonis and Jokic, because they are fundamental, they're reliable, they put the team first, and they're just really fun to watch. So I would I guess I would put myself in that sort of a category that's willing to do the rebounding and to try to set other people up for success. I try to live that out off the court as well.
Yeah, there you go. The pass first point guard, sort of a broader ethos. So I like the sort of garbage connector piece big man is also kind of the same sort of ethos. I like
I'd
it.
Take that. Thank you.
When you were a kid in Idaho, what were your earliest teams? Because obviously by the time you got to Oregon, Sabonis was, I guess he was just about to arrive the same time you did. But when you were a kid, who were the players you were drawn to?
Well, probably the one that I was most connected to initially. My dad was a hospital administrator, and I have a pretty vivid memory when I was very young, maybe like 8 or 9, going to, as soon as I say the place, you'll know the player, going to a conference with him that he went to at the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point. So, of course, a connection to Terry Porter was immediate, and I've been fortunate to meet him a few times over the years. But having that kind of a connection, being able to watch those teams with, there's Duckworth as well, another big guy who wasn't the fastest, and Buck Williams and Cliff Robinson and Kersey and all of that. When I got to Willamette, having watched those teams and feeling like I could have a sense of, somebody going to the free throw line and, what was their routine, how many dribbles, how many wipes of the brow, what was their lead up. There's not that many choices when you're in Idaho. You have to kind of glom onto someone who is regionally relevant.
I was going to say, I'm somewhat surprised you're not like a James Worthy guy, right? Like that you weren't like, oh, I love the 80s Lakers. And then you were going to have to tell us like, well, I was a Laker fan as a kid, but hear me out here. So,
I mean, you have to pick in those years when it was Lakers and Celtics, you had to pick one or the other, of course. And I think I probably gravitated a little more as a young, less sophisticated person to the Lakers, but it wasn't that long when I realized, wait, there's this former Blazer on the other side. There's Walden, who was, you could still, in some ways, he was sort of like Sabonis later. Like you could see the past, the prime kind of glory. Like I never got to see him when he was really at his peak, but even in those later years, you could kind of see what had been. So maybe Walton and the Celtics kind of helped me appreciate the Blazers in a different way. But they're a regional team, so it wasn't hard, and I was already there.
Yeah, I was just thinking like you were kind of subject to the one game on Sunday afternoon challenge, and so it was like what was going to be on TV type of thing. So I'm glad you found the radio.
There was no Prime Sports Northwest. There was nothing.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Okay, so you mentioned the Blazers. We're recording this the week before the lottery. The Blazers are going to they'll be in the lottery. They have a 3.7% chance to get the number 1 overall pick.
Much better than the Oregon lottery, I have to say. So let's go.
Way back when, there was right there on the House floor, there were a group of Oregon politicians, 26 of them, who were really actively making part of their day to campaign for the Blazers to make a specific pick. We're going to talk about what happened in 2007 in the third segment. Join us there, won't ya? Still a pass first point guard, still Mike Richmond, still chatting here with Tobias Reed, Oregon's Secretary of State. When you were a young legislator, I believe this was one of your earliest sessions, from what I can tell.
Very first.
Yeah, very first. Okay, I knew it was the regular session in June of 2007. So the Blazers had won the draft lottery. They had jumped up with a choice to make the number 1 overall pick. And if you will recall back then, a friend of the program and Washington Post writer, Ben Golliver, was about to get his start writing the blog draftkevindurant.net or something, maybe .com. I think it was .net, but shout out to draftkevindurant.net. Meanwhile, in June of 2007, a group of 26 Oregon politicians. Well, actually, what exactly did the 26 of you do back in June of 2007?
Well, let's set the scene here, because isn't this a ridiculous idea that a bunch of legislators who should be thinking about important esoteric things like what's the definition of a navigable waterway, or how to apportion gas taxes across roads, that this group of legislators was presumptuous enough, ridiculous enough to say, we have an idea about who the Blazers ought to draft. Ridiculous, crazy. But I think the idea, and I definitely was a rookie legislator who succumbed to this. I got to give credit to Rick Metzger, who was then a state senator and a former sports broadcaster who was the force behind this effort. I succumbed and I signed on. But I think it really was commentary on where we were then. These were people who had been longtime Blazers fans, I think, getting excited about having won a championship in '77, I think we got sort of locked on that we needed a post, a Bill Walton. Where was our current Bill Walton? We were so committed to this that we had drafted Sam Bowie over Jordan. So committed to this that we were not satisfied with serviceable posts like Kevin Duckworth and Joel Prisbilla, and yet here we are. Here's this moment. We've come through this terrible period where it was not really socially acceptable to be a Blazers fan. I mentioned earlier the Jail Blazer era. You couldn't really talk about being a Blazer fan. It was beneath sophisticated people. Politicians would not admit to such things. And so here's a little potential now. Brandon Roy had knees. There was a LaMarcus Aldridge coming on, and here's an opportunity to find that post who's going to be the final piece, who's going to bring us back to the next championship, our latter day Walton. And even better, it wasn't just that we had won the lottery. There was Brandon Roy bopping around with that optimism. It wasn't just that we had the number one pick. Our older sibling, our hated rival in Seattle, had number two. So what we didn't pick was going to be condemned to Seattle. So obviously it was ridiculous. Obviously we got it wrong. But it was great to have that excitement, to have that, amidst those other controversies and debates in the legislature, that we could make room for having this kind of a debate that people were actually talking about. It wasn't just the legislature; it was everybody who was into this, and we were able to weigh in with our presumptuous ridiculousness.
Yeah, here's the official
I hope we can
language.
do it again.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Okay.
you have to make another proclamation. No, just kidding. Here's the official proclamation from June of 2007. Whereas at this point of the season, we, the Oregon State Legislature, have two dates on our mind. June 29th, the date set for the legislature to adjourn, and June 28th, the date the Blazers make their draft pick. We, undersigned members of the 74th Legislative Assembly, recommend the Portland Trail Blazers choose Greg Oden. An official proclamation from 13 legislators, 13 state senators calling for Greg Oden. I'm wondering, do you have what's in your heart when you see Kevin Durant now 17 years later still be one of the, say, 20 best players in the NBA?
Well, I would say, there are two things. One, there's a difference between a good process and a good result, or bad process.
100% agree. It's good process. Yes,
clearly a bad result, but I think there was nothing wrong with the choice. And the other thing that is important to remember in that choice, there's a great industry in alternative histories, whether it's novels or television shows or whatever. But imagine we had drafted Durant. It seems very likely to me that we would have been denied the glory of the Dame Lillard years. So there's ups and there's downs, I just hope that we that 3.7% pays off, and we will probably not have the same kind of controversy in recommending Cooper Flagg be the choice if the Blazers have the top option.
Yeah, well, I hope just for the sake of fun, they do end up with the top pick, and you have to decide whether that's something you spend your business hours on.
Well, let's have a debate. Let's have a future. We might have to have a series through a whole week of lockdown. We could bring on different politicians. We could have different candidates. We could figure out who would be the other options beyond Flagg, and have a great debate. We could have a bracket. We could have some kind of
I would say
option to do all that.
Send me your junior reps. I want to hear any first year representatives recently elected. Bring them to Locked On Blazers and make them do something that 20 years later someone will ask them about on a podcast.
Yes.
That's what I'm looking for. I want it to be part of their legacy as well.
Rookie indiscretions. Yes.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining the program. This was really fun to sort of get a perspective that we don't always get on this particular show. I truly appreciate the time.
It's my great pleasure. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
All right, dear listeners, come back for tomorrow's show. It's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. Tell your friends about the podcast, the only show that has the Secretary of State on the program in the middle of the week. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.